So good morning. This class is going to be detecting surveillance in non-permissive environments. So usually take place in places overseas. So how many of you seen these slides before? Detecting surveillance. And seen these slides. Seen these slides. By definition, surveillance is the continuous periodic observing, right? Spying. Does it apply? So how many of you seen all these classes before? Does it fit into your working environment situation if you're overseas in a non-permissive environment? Of course they don't. No, you will be conducting surveillance detection in a non-permissible, possibly hostile environment. None of the classes you previously had on surveillance detection will help you here. It might give you a little information, but it's completely different. So what is your situation going to be? You're going to be working in a secured area, enclosed, completely separate from the local environment, which we will be traveling from at time to time to conduct the operations or jobs you've been hired to perform. You will be behind walls with guards. Everyone will know the location of your facility. Everyone will know when you're leaving and coming. Everyone will know if you're in a uniform or what you guys dress like. They won't know who you are specifically, but they're going to know you are not one of them. So basically, you are in a known location which will have a limited number of entrances and exits from a secure controlled environment to an unsecured uncontrolled environment that you will need to work in or at least travel through. You will not blend in. You are going to stand out. Your vehicle is not going to blend in and it's going to stand out. Usually these types of secure environments are forts have very limited number of points to get in and out. These very points are usually very long on entering or exiting so that vehicle checkpoints and control points and staging areas can be incorporated into the overall security of these areas. The problem is that this gives the threat half the information he needs to conduct operations against you, since you are now predictable. In this type of environment, operating environment, what exactly is the threat looking to do with the surveillance they do have? What information does he need? When you leave, and what route you're going to take, basically which direction you're going to go. And this is just going to be information. Later on, they could be targeting specific people of interest, especially if different vehicles are used and they know whether it's military or civilian vehicles or law enforcement vehicles. So to gather this type of information, he needs to do what? He needs to be in a location where he can see when you exit and which direction you're going to go, and he needs to have people at each decision point you go by through you go through or pass by. Now, a decision point is any location on the road or pathway where you can change directions. Also, they might want to know how much security you have, how many vehicles are going, did air cover follow you out. But once he knows you're outside the wire and heading west, he really only needs to make sure which route you stay on. To do this, he will place people at each location where you must make a decision point about your direction of movement. Okay, Now that they know you're outside your safe zone, outside the wire, and moving, and in what direction, what else do they need? They're going to need they're going to need communications. So they have the basic information. They need to tell somebody. So this is what you're observing for. Correlating activities when you approach, pass by, and leave any decision points in secure environments that you are working in. This means that you're looking for people whose actions are keyed off your actions, i.e., they stop talking to friends and get on a cell phone. They stand up and move so they can see you move around a corner, etc. People will look at you because you are there, but coordinating their movements to match yours, keying actions off of yours, and focusing solely on you and ignoring their environment is not normal and should be an indicator. They will set up surveillance at each location where people want to attack, including you, pass by, stop at, work at, or live at. They will also be watching at each area along a route that is considered a decision point, basically, again, a location you can change your direction. They must have a reason for being there long term, and this does not make the locals nervous because they don't know what's going on if strangers come in and look, and they have to blend in so they don't stand out to you and your security team or other people you're traveling with or local law enforcement. So remember, they used to say that 9% of attacks occur by the victim's home. This is because this is where they are most predictable. They will always set up an attack where you are most predictable, especially time and place predictable. So where do you think they have to be to know where you are and where you're going to be? Do they need to know when? They might not. This might not mean your unit specifically, but if the U.S. military uses these routes, or law enforcement, or other government agencies, or even non-government agencies, the route all the time. If they use the same route all the time, they could just be looking to attack the next person or unit that passes by. Predictability means how often it is used by people considered a target, not just yourself. Remember, they will attack you where you are most time and place predictable. It's easier for them to plan for that. Stationary or static surveillance. Most commonly preferred and used. It gathers information on routes and times, less skill required to mobile surveillance. As mentioned earlier, most takes place near the residence or basically the fort or wherever you're working out of, because that part of the route is least easily varied. It is harder to change to routines in the mornings and at home and at work at night than anywhere else in a daily schedule. It is where you are most predictable. Surveillance seek a position that permits them to observe entrances and exits to the secure area without being observed or suspected themselves. Because once you know you're under surveillance, you can take actions to help. If it is impossible for you to change your routes into and out of most military bases or secure areas, there are only certain access control points you can use. This makes these areas and roads leading into and out of the areas where you are predictable. They might not attack you there, but it's where they're going to be able to start their observation of you. So stationary fixed surveillance can be performed from vehicles, from a hotel or motel, from a house, from an apartment, from a warehouse, from a cafe, restaurant, concealed ground position, a roost, such as workers, anything they can do to sit there. They could be waiting online to go in and just never go into your base. But it'll give them a chance to observe you, and that's what they're looking for. Operating as a vendor gives a person conducting surveillance cover to be in the same place for extended periods of times. Questions you need to ask: is the vendor's locale reasonable for its business? I mean, are they going to be able to get business there, or are they just going to be able to see you? Do the proprietors look more interested in watching you than in making sales? What hours do they operate? Are they off hours, etc.? Does he key off your movements and actions? Does he always get on the cell phone when you approach or after you pass? That's a correlated activity. If you change your hours of movement to an earlier or later time, does he change his hours of operation? Does he open earlier or close later, etc.? Gathering areas. So outside of entrance and exits, these are pictures outside the exit to the green zone. These people are waiting to be allowed inside. No one checks to see if they have a valid reason to be there. Their observation is not obscured by screening to prevent them from gathering intelligence. They can sit there all day with no one running them off, and no one checks to make sure everybody's moving in. Bus stops. This is an area right side of the main entrance to the biop in Camp Victory. Once again, people waiting to get into the base or the biop. No one checks for a valid reason to be there. No screening to block observations, etc. Parks. This is an Iraqi military bunker, one of the highway interchanges coming out of Camp Victory. A perfect place to see which direction people are going and what route they're taking. All of these people have access to cell phones and are not observed or checked for whether they are reporting information or whether there's correlating activities to movement. Surveillance techniques. So they can do car bus stops like we just showed, taxi drivers, work crew, repairmen. It should be noted that terrorists or even the threat don't hesitate to use children to surveil and positively identify their targets. There were four embassy Marines that were murdered in San Salvador were positively identified to the terrorists by a young boy who knew him. Things to be alert for. Same person at same spot for extended period of time. Different people keep same spot occupied, observers, and they relieve each other. People who get on and off buses repeatedly. People with cameras, people sitting in cars. Operating as a vendor gives a person conducting surveillance cover to be in the same place for extended periods of time. The question is the vendor's locale reasonable for that business? I mean, is he getting business or is he getting no business? Do the proprietors look more interested in watching you or your building, your exits, your ins, or making sales? Once again, the hours of operation that correlate to you. Can children perform surveillance operations? Yes. At every entrance and exit to the bases wherever I was at, people tend to ignore the children, and children are very good at observing and reporting, and older children will have phones. People have a tendency to ignore children, but they're great intelligence collectors. Anyone who has kids, nephews, nieces, they can tell you about their whole day or about school trips, right? The same enthusiasm at what makes them good intelligence collectors. You only have to repeat what they saw, or they can have cell phones and tablets and take pictures and take videos. They can live stream. Everyone assumes they are playing there or just watching somebody who's different. That's a dangerous assumption. Blue light banners, law enforcement, they can basically be anywhere and people don't care. But you got to make sure law enforcement can be on the take too. They can be paid to do observations. They can be paid to carry cameras or video cameras. Law enforcement does not automatically mean safe. So surveillance vehicles. Vehicle surveillance are probably not going to happen since the vehicles you travel in stick out so much and can be seen for a long way off. But it's something to keep an eye out for when you're moving in low profile or taking a new route or moving in a high density vehicle environment where you have no choice, like in an inner city. But normal vehicle surveillance detection won't work since all vehicles are normally crappy looking and have two or more occupants. So watch the people in the vehicle, how they act towards you. If they get on the phone every time you change direction or stop, if they key certain actions off your movements or actions of your convoy, you need to be aware. Most surveillance vehicles are going to be inconspicuous in appearance, subdued in color, and normally two or more occupants. So technical surveillance. Of course you're going to use technical surveillance. There's been a lot of advances in technology, especially electronics. Terrorists make readily use of any threat does, makes readily available to them numerous devices to assist in their surveillance efforts. Primarily, these include but are not limited to cameras, both still and video, cell phones, GoPros, vehicle tracking devices, listening and recording devices, and computers. Everything's out there available now. And now you have to worry about drones. Drones are in use everywhere. And they can not only be used for surveillance, but they can also be used for delivering ordnance and attacking. And another thing to consider, either whatever area you're working in, wireless security cameras have signals that can be intercepted. This can be done by multiple methods, and you will not know your signal is being viewed by others. So if you're working at a fixed location or whatever, and you have wireless security cameras, there's a good chance that they're being observed by others. So you need to make sure they're not pointing towards anything that's important to you on the inside, especially where it concerns vehicles, movements, defenses, etc. You should ensure that when you do use CCTV cameras, they're used for vital areas or areas of information can be obtained or damaged or hardwired into the system and not wireless. Wireless is more convenient, but the possibility of them being intercepted is very real, and it can be used against you. So will they use just one? Stationary, en route, tactical. They're going to use whatever they need to get the information they have. Since you're in a fixed point location in a hostile environment, it's probably going to be they're going to use everything they can to get information against you. You just stand out too much. When explaining detection technique, it is important to consider the fact that a person sees only those things he observes. He observes only those things already in mind. So people have a tendency to get complacent, especially when because of how your mind works. The human mind can concentrate effectively on usually only one thing at a time. A person's eyes may see something and his mind may process the information, but unless he is thinking about the information or something brings it to his attention, his mind will filter out that information because it's not significant to him. Again, remember the map of the world. Your brain acts as a filter. An enhanced state of awareness is the key to an effective protective posture, especially in high threat environments. We get complacent and get comfortable with the way things are. Vendors, people standing around, people staring at us, kids everywhere. Never stop your observation of the environment you are moving in, and never assume that some people are safe, good to go. You have no way of knowing this, especially how much information they can be passing along. So detecting fixed or stationary surveillance. There's certain things you can do to help you detect fixed or stationary surveillance from a known point, which is where you'll be working from. So 15 minutes prior to your departure, you want to start observation. You want to check the entire area. You want to check people movement, vehicle movement, stationary, vendors, etc. And then you have to have that same person observe after your departure. So the person observing after your departure is going to be looking for correlated activities. What changes as you leave and go by some of these things that are being observed? Each team chief for each vehicle needs to get the most powerful binoculars he has and do a 15-minute observation along the initial route of travel. Since he will be the one with the greatest ability to observe, he needs to see how people are doing things along the egress gate or are acting prior to you moving out. So they will know when people are keying off of their movements. The TCs need to be observing as far out as possible, looking for how the attitude of people change, vehicles that are in place, and as the convoy approaches, so he can observe correlated activities and people keying off their movements. Ideally, every exit and entrance would have one person dedicated to this at all times and recording the behavior of personnel. If anyone exhibited too much interest or keeping keeps keying off of convoy movements, they can be detained for questioning. Sadly, this is not done. You have to do pre-movement observation. So once again, you have to do pre-movement observation at every location. The site being visited, your home base, any stopovers. You always have to keep your eyes open for correlating activities. It's the only way you're going to know. So you always want to check 15 minutes prior to departure and immediately outside. See what people are doing. Again, do not leave at the same time as other people going out. Observe all people who can see the departure point. Observe during the departure. You're looking for activities in those individuals. It's going to change. Once again, correlating activities. Do they stop what they're doing to make a phone call? If no one is on the phone before you leave, but as you leave the secure area you're in, someone gets on the phone and starts talking, he could be passing on information. Fixed site security at all departure points should be observing the people located out there and around, looking for correlating activities. All right? It doesn't matter where you're going or who you're visiting. You need to do this pre-movement observation. So the threat doesn't control everything. There are vulnerabilities to the threat that need to be observed, okay? That you can observe. All right? They must have visual contact with you. If they can't see you, they don't know what the heck you're doing. They are unable to control your environment or your movement unless they do something that creates a negative threat action for them, blocking you, etc. They always have a fear of being detected. They do not want to get caught and turned over to law enforcement or to you, possibly. Sometimes they're going to be unfamiliar and uncomfortable with the situation. They may be forced to do these observations. And there's always going to be the boredom, the hunger, the complacency, the fatigue, the distractions that are part of doing fixed site surveillance. So what do you want to do? You want to watch for subtle changes in the appearance of suspected surveillance. Keep in mind that people doing surveillance will try to change your appearance to make it more difficult for you to spot reoccurring faces. They may put on or take off hats, eyeglasses, reversible jackets, clip-on ties, or other simple things to break up the outline of their appearance. They could be people who got these jobs specifically to observe movement on the street or in the area. Or do they continue to work when you go by, or do they stop their work and pick up the cell phone? We always need to keep an eye open for any of those movements or actions that are keyed off of our movements. Terrorism is not a phenomenon, I wish I could talk, of only the male gender, nor are terrorists recognizable by any features that only they would display. Never assume your surveillant will be a man. An old woman or a young child could be used. A woman with a baby could be used. Once again, children are not only excellent at providing early warning to criminals, but being accurately aware of what is normal in an area. They also have a myriad of reasons for being in different locations while not arousing suspicion. And people tend to ignore kids or think there's no way a kid could be this threat. But passing information is a threat. Young women, old women, a group of kids, even young adults, etc. are I've seen them everywhere I've been, and people just tend to ignore from some headlines. So we need to keep a surveillance log. It's going to keep a log of observations. If you're smart, you'll also have a vehicle cam if you're moving by vehicle, or a dash cam, or you'll have some type of GoPro or something for when you're moving on the ground. Don't rely on your memory. If you can't have some type of video observation, you need to write it down. Document vehicles, people, situations that stand out. Document descriptors that do not change. Height, etc. Use dash cam video or other means of recording. It can be so important. So examples of daily logs. So we also want to do route surveys. I know we talked about them in detecting surveillance, but here it's especially important. So you want to identify key information areas, and you want to know where safe areas are, and etc. Traffic flow patterns, pedestrian patterns, hours. So you want to do a route description, which will be cover things like start and finish time, length, how long you think you're going, temporary construction, where it's located, is it valid, road surfaces, this can, effects of climate change on how you rode and how you travel, etc. It's just going to help you for planning. That's all it's for. Choke points, or what is called critical navigation areas. So a choke point or critical navigation area is an area that you have to pass through to get to your location. We always want to use different routes, but sometimes this is just not possible. So you want to know where all the traffic choke points are, whether you're walking or moving. So they can be anything. They can be traffic control points. They can be toll booths. It can be narrow bridges. It can be streets that go run one way, during certain times. Uh, just, roundabouts. Uh, Anything that you have to pass through, you have no choice. So attack recognition when driving, just like we discussed before. So for attack recognition, you got to be observant of all that's going on place around you. Learn to observe as far as you can see. Observe to the rear and keep vehicles out of your blind spot. Be alert for suspicious activity. You're watching for people who are too focused on you and keying off your movements, ignoring their environment. In a vehicle, sometimes you can tell if somebody's watching you too hard by just jigging your wheel a little, because if you jig your wheel, they probably will too. There's just all, you know, just be observant. Be especially observant when you're approaching choke points. Be aware of your options. Keep your distance from suspicious activity. Watch for nonverbal communications of pedestrians or vehicles that are on the side, whether somebody's looking at somebody or you see them trying to hand signal, etc. If you see somebody standing there, pick up, get on their phone and talk, and as they dial, somebody in a car that's parked there that can block you or do other damage to you picks up their phone. You have to be observant of what's going on around everywhere. Just like we talked about before, you're looking for the transition. A threat has to go from a non-threat to a threat. They have to transition to be able to attack you or cause you issues. You have to look for that transition. The attack will have to transform from the non-threat to the threat. You have to watch the hands. Almost everything they do will be the first sign of the threat will be with their hands and their movement. And this can be anything, uh, they could be reaching into their bags. They could stand up suddenly. They could start moving towards you. They can be reaching into their jacket. This is all signs of people moving from a non-threat to a transitioning to an attack posture. So they're going to pick their attack site. We talked about this before too. They're looking for a site that will give them predictability of the target. Time and place predictability is going to make you a target and a victim. Their ability to blend into that environment so they don't get detected and get stopped before they can carry out the attack. And they're going to want escape routes out of the area. If it's just an attack, they want to do the attack and they want to haul ass before the police get there so they don't get blocked in. If they're going to kidnap you or do, steal something, they're going to want routes that will allow that to take place also. Analysis of attack data shows that over 85% of attacks have happened where? They happen where the victims are most predictable. Once again, time and place predictability will make you a victim. And believe it or not, usually it's at your start location or your end location. Usually it's at your home or your static base or it's at sites you have to go to. It could even be gas stations. Just don't be so predictable. So, summary: be observant, be unpredictable. It is hard to avoid surveillance, especially when you're working in a high threat, non permissive environment. In either the U.S. military, the U.S. government overseas, as contractors, it can be the same at home too, depending on the type of environment. Remember the riots, the police stations, and outpoints that were attacked. So when you're going to stand out when you live isolated from the locals in whatever country you're living or working in, you must be observant and not become predictable in movement patterns. Remember, not just you, but if the military only uses one road or route, eventually an ID is going to be waiting for that target, or so there's some type of attack. Just be as unpredictable as possible in the environment you're working in. So, in one last thought, death is the way terrorists tell you that you have passed their selection process. They're always looking for that easy target. So if there are any questions on detecting surveillance in a non-permissive environment, hit me up. I'll answer them. Thanks for listening to the class. Hopefully my voice will get better as I go along. You guys have a great day.